time. Like whenever there's something good that might serve to illustrate the utility of religion, he just says, well, that doesn't come from religion. So for Dawkins, for example, as far as I can tell, he believes that all good is post-enlightenment. It's like people have been rational for about 400 years, and that's when we finally got our moral act together, and it was the emergence of that rationality that finally wiped the beams out of our eyes. But the idea that human morality is grounded in a rational tradition that's only 400 years old is, I would say, it's philosophically primitive beyond belief, and it's characteristic, I think, of the essential shallowness of Dawkins' rationalist thought. He's a very good biologist, and he's a good Darwinian, and those are admirable things.
You're a good Darwinian, aren't you?
Yeah, I think Darwin was the greatest scientist that ever lived. I think the implications of his theory will be unfolding for centuries, assuming we live that long. But Dawkins is not a deep thinker. He's a very predictable rationalist.
Okay, let's... just before we go to this next graphic, Michael, perhaps I can remind people to go to tvo.org and vote on the question of the night. Would we be better in this world without religion? Go to tvo.org and cast your vote. And then let's bring this up as well, because Dawkins quotes Bertrand Russell. Even if we open the windows of science at first, make us shiver after a cozy indoor warmth of traditional humanizing myth, in the end, the fresh air brings vigor, and the great spaces have a splendor of their own. There's Bertrand Russell from 1925. Why can't we live by reason and science alone? Imam.
Well, religion picks up where reason and science leaves off. It's not one or the other, but both and. And one who limits himself only to science actually cannot really deal with the big questions of life. Why are we here? Science investigates how things work, but not why they're here to work in the first place.
He would just say that's a question we haven't found the answer to yet, but we're going to keep working at it.
Well, from what he discusses in his book, it is very possible that God could exist. He has no way of ruling out that as a possibility. What he calls the high point of his book is this chapter which he is entitled Why God Almost Certainly Does Not Exist. So it's almost certainly, on a scale of 1 to 7, where 7 would be absolutely God does not exist, he places himself as number 6, right, which would mean that there's a possibility that God could exist. And hence, we may both have to show up before God and answer for what we have believed and what books we wrote in this life. So in the end, we need much more than science, because science goes only so far, and religion informs us of the rest.
Okay, we've got an email come in here at tvo.org. Mike writes in and says, if religion did not exist, wouldn't the human race create new ideals or beliefs to cause as much conflict as created by religious belief? Jordan.
Well, this is another indication of the utility of a certain amount of psychological knowledge. So social psychologists study this phenomenon called minimal group difference. It turns out that people are so susceptible to making in-group, out-group distinctions and then getting all irate about them that you can base an ethnic conflict on virtually any premise you can possibly imagine. Like, if anything's built into us any more deeply than religion, it's the ability to identify with a group on whatever grounds possible and to immediately be irritated with all the people who aren't. And that there's no evidence at all that that's predicated on religious belief. I think it actually contributes to it in a complicated way, but it's not the fault of religious belief that that's the case.
In fact, you brought up the Balkans, and the joke about the Balkans was it was the Serbs who don't go to the Orthodox Church fighting against the Croats who don't go to Catholic Church, against the Bosnian Muslims who don't go to mosque.
They're team colors. You can be
team colors, okay.
They fight over soccer.
We only got a few minutes left here, so I want to get one more graphic in here and then discuss this. Imagine, this is Dawkins from The God Delusion, imagine with John Lennon a world with no religion. Imagine no suicide bombers, no 9/11, no 7/7, no crusades, no witch hunts, no gunpowder plot, no Indian partition, no Israeli-Palestinian wars, no Serb-Croat Muslim massacres, no persecution of Jews as Christ killers, no Northern Ireland troubles, no honor killings. Imagine no Taliban to blow up ancient statues, no beheadings of blasphemers, no floggings of female skin for the crime of showing an inch of it. A world without religion. Shabir, what would it be like?
Well, you don't need to do away with religion to do away with all those things. Those are obviously negative manifestations of religion, and that has to go. But you do not throw away the baby with the bathwater. You keep the baby. And so religion has to be recognized for the goodness it does for society. For one thing, it does give us reason to be good. If without religion, we may want to be good, but we don't have to. And why should you want to?
So the only reason you think people are good is because they want to go up there after it's all over.
No. The point is that without belief in God, who created us for the purpose of being good and doing the right things, there is no reason to be good. You may be good if you want to, and atheists can be very good people, but the moral foundation, the impetus for being good, or the grounding of it is simply not there. If one wishes to adopt a child, according to what Dawkins has explained in his book, this is actually misfiring from ancient times. It's because of he explains it by saying there is a bird that has a nest, and the bird is somehow by instinct going to feed the babies that are opening up their beaks. But if a cuckoo places a baby that does not belong there, the bird will behave the same way. If one wishes to adopt a child today, one is actually misfiring and copying the similar sort of behavior that actually was represented in this bird who had the instinct to feed her own young.
Minute to go.
Well, Nietzsche imagined a world without religion in about 1860. And he said, well, now that God's dead and we've killed him, we won't be able to find a river big enough to wash away all the blood. And that was a prophecy for the 20th century, because what Nietzsche knew was that when a belief structure falls apart, chaos follows in its aftermath. And like Dawkins doesn't have much of an imagination for just how insane and terrible people can be if their beliefs are seriously and fundamentally disrupted. Now, he thinks his rationality is an entity unto itself, but it's supported by all sorts of invisible things he doesn't understand. And if those invisible things disappear, all hell will break loose.
And that'll last 20 seconds to you.
Self-transcendence, that's the ultimate reason we need religion. We need to get out of our own egos. We need a beyond, and we need a bigger connection. He needs it. And in that quote from Bertrand Russell, you get the sense that science gives us the space to be bigger and to think bigger than ourselves, and religion holds us down. And in the book, Dawkins says religion makes us small and we need to be big.
You think the opposite, I suppose.
Yes.
Well, the religious impulse is breaking through the scientific impulse there.
Yeah, well, they're the same.
And they can inform each other.
They're the same.
Okay, before we take off here tonight, let's find out what the people had to say about this question, because we're going to take a final look at our web question. You came in at tvo.org and we asked, would the world be better off without religion? 84% of our viewers said yes. 16% of our viewers said no. I don't know what to make of that, other than I think
They're
you
watching
three...
Dawkins.
They watched for Dawkins.
Yeah, sure. That's the explanation.
Otherwise, you three are three pretty disappointed people tonight, but I wouldn't say that. Jordan Peterson, good having you at the other end of the table. Nadat Sonat, Shabir Ali, great having you back in the studio as well. Thanks so much to all three of you.
Yep.
Now, for more information on tonight's guests and Richard Dawkins and some of his critics, visit tvo.org. Tonight's producers were Sandra Jonas and Wojtek Schemberg, and you can keep this conversation going on their blogs as well, available online, also at tvo.org.